This is the ERP Advisor.
Today's episode, ERP Implementation Case Study Series, Private Equity Platform Companies. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, ERP Implementation Case Study Series, Private Equity Platform Companies. Shawn Windle is our speaker for today. Shawn is the founder and managing principal of ERP Advisor Group based in Denver, Colorado. Shawn has over 25 years of experience in the enterprise software industry, helping hundreds of clients across many industries with selecting and implementing a wide variety of enterprise solutions. His podcast, The ERP Advisor, has dozens of episodes with thousands of downloads and is featured on prominent podcast platforms such as Apple and Spotify. On today's call, Shawn continues our ERP implementation case study series by reviewing case studies for private equity platform companies and the successful practices that helped each achieve a successful go live. Welcome, Shawn.
Hello. Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah, of course. So the private equity industry is vast and they do a lot of different things. Each platform or portfolio needs a completely different strategy to meet their requirements. And so just to kind of set the stage, what are some reasons why a PE firm may look to upgrade to or select a new ERP for their portfolio companies?
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic because even like right now, we've definitely seen a slowdown, I think, with private equity being desirous of making bigger ERP implementation investments, here in April 2024. April 2023, that wasn't the case. And then interest rates changed. Dun, dun, dun. So they couldn't use other people's money. That's kind of true. No, there's a lot more reasons than that. But I think unlike a lot of the private companies that we work for, or even public companies that we work for, private equity's investment in ERP, it's just different. It's just a different model. It's not good or bad. It's just different because you basically have three major factors. One is timeline. So the timeline for a PE investment could be short-term, medium-term, long-term. So if we have a short-term sort of investment period, then there's not a lot of time to make the money back on an ERP implementation. So that's the first thing. The second thing is standardization of processes across portfolio companies that some PEs, that's the value proposition when they partner with a proprietor or a group of private people that then want to bring in a PE partner, like, yeah, we have the playbook for running sales. We have the playbook for even sometimes, believe it or not, even down to quality for manufacturing, especially around FDA regulations and that a PE can bring. So standardizing those processes may drive into ERP. But I think the third and probably the biggest factor that's a little bit different that, we always try to spice it up, Rebecca. We got to spice them up.
Have to.
Yes. Is you are usually working a private equity associate principal, who's over the portfolio company is usually working with an entrepreneur, a group of entrepreneurs. Now, the private equity firm may buy the business from another private equity firm that's working with maybe a more, say, professionally managed executive team. But you got a lot of determinisms. You have a lot of determination and opinions that, like me, I run my own company. I know how to do it better than anybody else, and then we don't have PE, but then somebody else comes in and says, well, I've run 3 other businesses just like you, and maybe you're not doing it right. Oh, you're probably right. Imagine that if you're, $250 million international life sciences distributor manufacturer, your PE comes in and says, hey, wait a minute, you should be doing this. And so you get these personalities that have to come together and decide what's really the best thing for the organization. So that's really the third factor is what do these like really high-powered people think is the right thing to do for the organization? Whereas when you're on your own, you don't have your PE partner coming in with an opinion or maybe even a mandate to go to a certain app. You got to do it on your own, right? But vice versa, as from the PE associate down to their portco, they're like, we own you. we can tell you what to do. So take it. But see, the savvy PEs never do that. Never, ever, 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 ever do that. Don't do that. That is a disaster in the making. I can think of a company actually here in Colorado that did that. And, the controller, the CFO, the senior accountant all left. And sure, they did get the system that the PE company enforced upon them. And maybe them leaving was part of the synergy savings that they made the acquisition for, just to be honest. But again, this third factor, personality, is huge. That again, the savvy PE, representatives, they get it, they know. So those are a couple, three factors. We can drill into that more later too.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to dive into that. And that kind of leads into the next question. I think more than any other industry area that we kind of deal with, people affect PE, and the personalities, like you said, affect it even more than we would see. Obviously, there's those factors in any sort of ERP project, implementation, upgrade. But in a PE centric project, you're bringing all of these different people, like you said, that think that they're so set in their ways, they know what they want to do. And, oh, you're going to give me the funding. Great. But do I really want to do what you're asking me to do? So, leading into our next question, why are portfolio company ERP selections so complicated?
Oh, again, it's ERP selections are just complicated in general. And then we layer on top of that almost like 3 or 4 or 5 different dimensions that come into that when we're doing private equity selections with their portfolio companies. I mean, I can say all the normal stuff, but when I really kind of pervade into the experience that we've had and how it really goes, I don't know. I hate to always come back to the people, but I'm thinking of one in particular, one case study that we prepared for to talk about today. And here's something that's unusual to talk about. Again, Rebecca, that's why we do this, is for the people that are listening. Like, I hope you don't have to go through these experiences, but there's some good nuggets on what to do too. But in one particular scenario, I'm thinking with, the portfolio company was purchased and it became a platform for additional businesses similar to it, not the same. Cultures were a little different as usual. And so you have all those merger and integration issues that PE companies have to deal with when they have a platform company. And again, there's kind of an understanding that we're probably going to lose a lot of people through that process. And it usually turns out okay. Sometimes some of the key people leave. But in this instance, we had a rock star leader who was going to be tapped as the main person to run the ERP project. And he had a beautiful vision, made total sense, understood the businesses, and let's go buy best of breed software. It's going to be fantastic, right? Negotiating contracts with one vendor till the wee hours of the morning. I'll never forget that. To hit their year end, get the year end discount and closed, et cetera, et cetera. I think even the client on that one was at like a Elton John concert or something, and we're talking on the phone like, okay, this is what we got. Is that good? Yeah. Whoa, is that Rocket Man? It was really funny. There you go.
That's commitment. Oh, perfect.
I love those icons. Yeah,
I do too. They're fun.
Yeah. So he was really driving this and really kind of the visionary behind it and ran it, and then we've got all the software lined up and then start the project. Okay, good. Now we got to get in the detailed requirements, and he's around and he's helping to drive it and everything's good. But this is a PE play. So chances are we're going to buy some more businesses or maybe sell. And who do you want? Who do you want? Or even bigger customers, because now all these little businesses are big business, so they can go to bigger customers. Who do you want in front of your large prospective clients? Who do you want in front of your prospective buyers? Who do you want in front of your prospective acquired target businesses? The same guy who wants to run the ERP project or should be running the ERP project. So he goes in a million directions. The rest of the team's kind of sitting there like, we think we know what we need to do, and trying to move this project along. But I'll tell you, without that visionary, it was really freaking hard. So I do think that's a lesson that I learned, that, had we gone with maybe a little simpler software, to be honest with you, I think the team, it was a very bright and savvy team, but I think they would have been better off with a simpler solution than a best of breed solution because the team could implement that on their own. And we weren't so dependent upon the rock star that everybody else in the business was dependent upon. So ultimately it was okay. The fact that they had gotten actually through about 3/4 of the implementation became a reason why, or actually a valuation point on the acquirer side of, oh, you have these contracts in place, you're going through this process, and that level of software makes a lot of sense for the next step up that this company was going to basically be in with the new PE that was going to buy from the old PE. So it worked out okay. But I don't know. I think we probably should have just gone something a little bit lighter that would have fit versus this one person who really had this vision for best of breed. So that was a really good lesson learned. And I think for people listening to this, so much of software selection, to go back to specifically your question, is driven by people. And if you do have that one person who's like, I got the vision, this is what we need to do. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Yeah, this is great. Yeah. Oh, wait. Oh, where'd you go? You got to be realistic.
Yeah.
You have to be realistic.
Yeah. And we've talked a lot this year about managing expectations. And I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah.
That company was super interesting. And I know we're going to dive deeper into them a little bit later. But this next question to still just kind of set the stage for our PE portfolio companies that we're going to be talking about today. I know lots of the play right now in PE, and kind of some things that I'm seeing is they might pull in a manufacturing piece, and then they pull in a distribution piece, and then suddenly they're pulling in a field services piece, and then, oh, now we're engineers in some way, shape, or form. So because of those complicated requirements across different industries, do PE firms need to select a single ERP across their portfolio, or do they have the flexibility when developing their technology stack to go different directions?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I tell you, the right way. Well, first off, I really want everybody to acknowledge what Rebecca just said, because it's taken me about 20 years to be able to even eloquently be able to say what I'm about to say. But the fact that you can like very succinctly put that question forward is of the utmost importance. Oh, we should do best of breed versus all in one. No, 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 no. You have to understand what Rebecca, with what you just said here is, when you are going for a play, an investment play with a thesis that's not just dependent upon do the same thing bigger, but it's do what we're doing and then acquire adjacent businesses. When we hear adjacent as the software advisor, we're like, I get like that, whatever that's called. Like, oh my gosh, here we go. The other piece of this too that has to be kept in mind is, what do we know now? And what do we know about where we're going to be? And sometimes we don't know where we're going to be. None of us know what's going to happen tomorrow. Maybe some people do, but I don't exactly. I can guess, got a lot of years behind me to look ahead. But in the PE play that is based on adjacent businesses or based on, auxiliary services being offered, just like you said, the reality is we would tend towards a platform play. So, because the next question, inevitably, and for those people with PE firms, VCs, institutional investors that are listening to this, I know what you're going to say. You're like, I don't really care. I just want the analytics on how the business is performing. It's up to you, operating peeps, to figure that out. Good luck. So then the operating people are like, okay, we can do that. Let's go get a data scientist or a, BI or blah, blah, blah kind of person. Man, it's stuff's a bear. It's a bear, right? So the benefit of having a single platform with either best of breed bolt-ons or modules that a software vendor offers is that all the data is at least in one place. And it's somewhat normalized when we say a customer, well, the customer for field services versus for manufacturing versus for distribution, at least is the same customer record if we're on the same system. Now, the reality is it never works out that pretty. and then we have usually, again, the PE representatives like, okay, so when are you going to have this done? Like what time? What time are you going to have this done? Oh yeah, 18 months. And, So we just had another client recently that we met with, really great company, really neat strategy on what they're doing. And we had this exact same discussion, right? They're sort of following a best of breed approach today. And we're therefore looking for best of breed software to fit one category. And then they kind of took a step back and said, is that really what we should be doing? And they called us and we said, well, you can do it. Here's the implications of that. Here's additional costs that you would incur. Or you, instead of getting that best of breed app, you could get more of a horizontal solution that does a bunch of stuff and just use the core apps today. But then you have a platform that you can extend going forward into the future. Because the other yummy component of it all is if you have a entrepreneur that is quite tech savvy, and you wouldn't believe how many companies run custom systems, even if it's for a small customer, whatever kind of an app, CPQ or anything, right? So now, especially from the PE side, you've purchased a platform and you are dependent upon custom apps, and to rewrite the custom app is a nightmare every single time and can take a long time. So why would we ever do that? Well, maybe we can leverage a platform. Maybe we can leverage some out of the box functionality that even an M4 offers, right, across lots of those different functional areas that you said. Maybe enhance that a little bit, and there you go. And we have a strategy for getting off of the custom systems.
Yes.
But the other piece that I don't know if it's unspoken or you're not supposed to talk about it. My partner's probably cringing right now. She always does when I say things like that. But it's kind of true here that, again, the PE representative. So again, there will be somebody, a VP or somebody pretty high up from the private equity firm that's part of the board, as part of the decision making. But a lot of PEs have experts that have a lot of industry experience. They may have worked for huge companies and now they're going to work for smaller companies. It's a little different. It's kind of a different world. Fine, but they know what they're doing. But they're constantly thinking in the back of their mind with like, I got to get this done. Like, we got to get into the app, stop the yip yap, go, right? Go. Meanwhile, the owner, especially if they're coming off of custom systems, may be a little more intellectual, a little bit more nebulous, wanting to kind of feel their way through some things, which is why they usually make a great partnership, frankly.
Yeah.
So, when you're bringing these factors together, again, you can tell these are like in the trenches kinds of recommendations. This isn't high level beanie weenie stuff that you sit in a boardroom in New York City and talk about. I mean, this is like really in your face, like in the trenches of like, how do we pull this ERP implementation off? But those are some key points, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. That's lots of great information to set the stage for what we are about to dive into. So, this is a case study series, like I said in the last call. So let's really dive into these clients and see what we can get out of it. So first one is an international platform, life sciences distributor and manufacturer with around $500 million in revenue. So just to start that out, what were their main requirements going into the ERP selection?
So they were mostly focused around reporting, financial reporting, and meeting certain metrics that their PE had put out in terms of close. But also quality, right? The quality of the reporting was such that it wasn't very good. And so, they sort of looked at, what do we do about that, right? And we'll jump into that. But that's the basic problem we're trying to solve.
Okay, great. And then, you kind of just said it. So what problems did the new ERP solve? What did they end up solving with this?
Yeah. So this particular company, run by a really savvy CIO, who has lived through ERP, he basically said, like, there ain't no way that I'm going to select one ERP and roll it out across the entire business, right?
Yeah.
We just had a call recently, Erica and I did, where the owner is saying, I really think we should go one app across all these diverse, disparate businesses. And we're meeting with his team, and we said, this is actually a prospective client, and we said, look, we're going to tell you the truth. We're going to tell him the truth. Now, maybe you guys can't because your boss says, this is what I really want to do, and that's the way we're going to go. Fine. We're not in that position because we can say, you're wrong, but here's why, and here's how we'd handle it, and here's what the other alternative is. Oh, okay, cool. Most savvy business people are that way, right?
Yeah.
In this instance, that was definitely the case, that the CIO was very much saying, I don't want to go replace the old Inforce solution that sits in Hungary and the Microsoft that's down in Argentina, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know what else to do. So we took an approach of consolidation, financial reporting, almost what you could consider kind of like a super general ledger, right? Like a new GL, not from any of the existing ERPs because they didn't have the capability and functionality to support that, but to bring whatever data that we could, financial data from all of these different entities and their systems, and consolidate it. Now that sounds super simple, but some of the entities were giving Excel spreadsheets for their monthly close. Others, again, on large, F&O, finance and operations, Microsoft solutions, or M3, older Infor products, and they could give a trial balance. Others could give all journal entry detail. And so we selected an application that could basically suck in all this information. It was all financial information. So what's really interesting about that is we did look at some consolidation tools, and what we realized was we actually did want the strong controls of a GL. So we did go with a tier 1 accounting system to bring in this information versus a OneStream or a Hyperion or whatever.
Yeah.
Because the GL could have structured data in it. And then once we did all the hard work of standardizing the information, a chart of accounts mappings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that then you could do the consolidation, intercompany eliminations, currency translation, and then do the corporate reporting at that level. So it was pretty cool because, again, I need to do like a little thing. I think if I do that, the fireworks come off. Listen. You don't have to replace all of your portfolio companies with the same ERP. Please, a lot of people still go into these thinking, okay, we got to go and replace this ERP around the world. Don't you dare do that if you don't have to. Sometimes you do. But I mean, that's a real nugget that even operational data, they had built out Click in sort of analytics warehouses to do operational data. And then this GL became their financial data. And I love that solution because it was doable in a short amount of time.
Yeah. And I think, based off of what I've seen, you and I have kind of talked about it, EPM is becoming so much more important to people and just built in to certain platforms. So that's super interesting to just hear more about what they went through.
That enterprise performance management or corporate performance management, FP&A consolidation, it's all kind of, each vendor calls it all a little bit different, but there was actually another company just recently, we just said that yesterday, like, hey, just stay on your operational systems. You could use a Hyperion and OneStream, even Adaptive Insights or Vena. There's so many, and yes, they're all different. And I know different vendors. You wouldn't want me to compare those vendors to you, but there's different needs that people have that would lead towards those different solutions. But they're a lot easier to do if that's your problem. Don't go out and make all your end users change everything just because you can't do financial reporting correctly.
Right. And going into this, like, what were some of the major challenges they faced during their implementation?
Well, these guys, I don't know. Can you ask me a different question? No, because I hate, the reality is the challenges they faced were no different than anybody else. And it does come down to they're wicked busy. So again, I always try to think of different things than what our audience is thinking with here. You all know, whether you're on the client side or the PE side, that the client side is busy. That's why you bought them, because they're busy and they're growing and you're trying to grow them and everybody's running around trying to get the next deal or trying to buy the next blah, 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 right? The key thing is the people that need to do the ERP project are exactly the people that you have involved in doing the due diligence on the company that you're buying or are integrating the last one or whatever. So, they had two basic kinds of problems. One side of it was they're great people, were super wicked busy. So would they show up to all the calls? Would they do all the testing and blah, blah, blah when there's a deal in front of them? The answer is always no. So that was a problem. And then on the vendor side, the vendors are busy. So you have to watch out for them and make sure that they're engaged and they're putting their best people forward and they're not pulling people to go work on the next go live in the middle of your implementation. So fortunately, those were the kinds of problems that they ran into. I say fortunately because it wasn't like they got into the solution and they're like, oh my gosh, this doesn't do what we don't want it to do, right? It was just people. So that's another dimension here as I kind of build out this Rubik's for making this decision that, you really have to look realistically at the team that you're working with, and that would end up being the subject matter experts from the client side to say, can we really do this or not? And if they can't, it might be, this is hilarious. I've never said it like this. If you look honestly at the Portco and you look at the folks that are there, and you might have 2 or 3 ex-GE people or ex-Accenture people or whatever that you can put on because you have that in your portfolio as the private equity company. But if you look at those key people and there's just, questions about if they can do the business and if they could do ERP and they're busy with other stuff that you need them to do, you might want to push it and take the discount on the acquisition on the back end, right? Oh, they have old software. So, I'm not going to pay 250 million. I'm going to pay 200 because it's a $50 million SAP implementation, even though it wouldn't be. It might make sense to just kind of, push the buck up this upstream to the next partner who maybe has a little more time and has a little bit more risk tolerance to take on an ERP project, because I think a lot, especially the mid-sized PEs that we work with, they just don't have the tolerance for that sometimes.
Yeah. And I'm going back to you starting this question. Like, I think the mundane is just as important as the projects where everything is absurd and hits the fan and like you have to deal with it. I think it's so good for anybody on the call or any of our prospects, clients to really get the reality that like everybody goes through these things. And you need to understand the common things that people go through, because if those things aren't correct, it's not going to matter if you have other obstacles. Like the project's going to fall apart either way. So I still think these are super important things to tackle in these calls, even if it is, oh, I've already said this. I've already talked about the staffing issues, but that's lots of great insight. Speaking of a project that is very unique and had its own challenges, we're going to go into the next case study. This was a consolidated 1,000+ employee field services Portco. You know who I'm talking about.
Yep.
What were their main requirements going into the ERP selection?
I don't think it was very different than a lot of similar plays, if you will. Standardized processes across multiple disparate businesses that they'd picked up on legacy technology, get them on something new, get in more automation so that there could be some synergies where we could let go of a lot of office personnel sort of located around the country that were doing a lot of manual work. I mean, those are probably the 3 big things. I think pretty basic sort of a business case, which is very easy to show, benefits realization and monetization around that to get into the ERP project.
Yeah. And usually the next question I would ask was, what problems did the new ERP solve? But I'm going to go a little I'm going to skip that one for this client and kind of let's go into like, what were some of the major challenges they faced during their ERP implementation?
Yeah. I think I've talked a little bit about some of them already, but I think another challenge that was atypical, the typical stuff is users around the country are like, no, I don't want to standardize on your process. I'm like, well, we bought you, right? Yeah, it doesn't matter. Oh, okay, you're probably going to be gone in 6 months. So we'll wait till you're gone. I mean, those are all common problems, I think, with PE plays with ERP across the consolidated business. But I think unusual was, but that's usual too. They're also buying businesses. Also usual, the lead IT person left. Also usual, the lead CFO left. Oh, you can feel the anxiety increase. But again, unusual was, I think the PE really had a, I think a lot of investment
Mhm.
in software. Like that's a little bit atypical where they really did buy best of breed software. And now you're stuck with this field services app that's quite expensive. And couple years into the implementation, maybe a year and a half, and decide halt because they're actually looking at being acquired by another business. But I mean, I the things that keep me up at night are not what keep up other people. It's situations like this that do, where I have to say, okay, I helped them get into that contract, right? And I mean, it took a lot of work, and we were a big part of that. We knew the risks, we knew what could happen, but now we saddled this company with a 3-year contract on a very expensive application that ultimately they were halfway through and they had to put it on hold. Now, I think we even helped do some videos, right? You and our
Yes.
team and Will helped to put together some videos of just here's what this solution will look like end to end, which was great. But this private equity made a big bet on the lead person. I hope they're not listening, but even if they are, it's fine, right? From the client side, and his availability went whoop. One of the key guys that he was leaning on went whoop and left, um, and so we have this big software contract. So I think it's going to work out. I think it probably has already, but that was a differentiator that they really did want to invest in best of breed software with the higher price tag. Very few of our PE plays probably would have done that. And I think at the end of the day, I think it was the right thing. I know if they would have gone with a medium level solution, we would have got them up and running and live. But we also didn't deal with the real change management issues of the field people just saying no, regardless of what app you're on. So it's just tricky. It's the investment model for buying enterprise software for a PE, putting together ROI and just looking at what that return looks like is just wonky with private equity plays. It's just different. It's not about if we use the software, we can save this much time, or we can drive this much more sales, or we can reduce COGS, or we can reduce purchase price, and we can increase EBITDA because we have better reports, blah, 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 or just understand where the business is in real time. There's just these other variables of like, I mean, the team is already going through all kinds of changes because you're mashing these companies together, and half of them are going to leave. Okay, well, what's the next worst thing that you can do to a company to make people leave? It's roll out an ERP. So now maybe the really good people leave because they don't want to deal with a new ERP. But again, depending on the PE's value that it provides to the market, taking a business and making it more professionally managed, or again, finding more adjacent businesses and bringing those together and finding synergies between those businesses, or just making them bigger, have a bigger geo reach or whatever. You really do have to look at like the realities of, oh yeah, we'll just go get a new system. Don't do that. Like this is going to affect people in ways that, we talk about this all the time. We've had controllers that get sent to the hospital before go live because they're freaking out so much, and they should be, right? So I think it really does come down to um, what is the impact or potential impact of rolling out an ERP in terms of lost people, which I think is obvious, but also now we're saddled with these larger contracts, right? We've had other plays that just do 12-month contracts, right? Because they don't know what's going to happen. So you got people contract duration. And then the last piece I'd say to this is the architects from the client side that are building all this stuff. If you're relying on consultants for that, even if it's consultants with the PE firm, right? They have their own consultants. Those people jet all the time and they're looking for the next deal. So you want to look at your portfolio company and look at the resources. And there's probably like 2 or 3 people that are committed to the play, not just golden handcuffed, but committed to seeing this thing out, just the business itself, and then give them the ERP, you are golden, because those people will be around. They're vested to make it go right. Yeah, without them, it's just really dangerous. So, man, this is like negative Nancy naysayer conversation from Shawn today, or whatever negative you
Yeah.
prefer.
Well, yeah, it can be. I mean, it's hard to talk about these things, but they have to be talked about, or else, as much as we try to stay on the positive side, which we really do, and most of
Yeah.
the time there are really positive things, I think I appreciate our transparency. And I've also gotten that from other people
Good.
where it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Like if I'm going to sit here and lie to you and say that it's going to take a month and you're going to be fine and everything's going to be great, like you're going to be disappointed. And that goes back to the expectations, I think, at the end of the day.
Well, and Rebecca, you're spot on for just anything, any types of businesses, but whoa, holy moly, in this space, I mean, there are firms that specialize in working with PE only.
Right.
And you want to talk about sunshines and rainbows and stuff, like these guys are, I mean, they're just kind of shady. I never say that about my competition, except I just did. You really have to watch out for these people. Like, oh yeah, this is going to take 6 months, and here's the plan, and here's the playbook, and we've done this before, and blah 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 blah. And then that company doesn't gel with the individuals at the portco. You are screwed. You are SCREWED, because it's not going to go. So, and usually those firms that focus on portco work for PEs, they're pretty savvy, they look nice, they dress nice, whatever. And then you're going to anywhere, and you're actually dealing with the real people that are going through this. And they're like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm not going to listen to that person, because they don't care about me. Right.
Yeah.
So it's business. Don't get me wrong. But, with it, when it comes to advising PE and the portcos, you really got to pick people that you like and that you can trust, because, man, oh, no, Shawn, it's just a transaction. And that's when we say, you know what? Understand, see you later, right? Frankly, this is why in the past, private equity hasn't been a big play for us, because we work with 3 phenomenal firms right now that we trust. They trust us. They know we're going to do the right thing. But there's been other firms in the past where it's like, we just kind of need to get this done. I don't care about the flip flap, jaw jabbing, whatever. And we just say, okay, we're not the right firm for you.
Yeah. No, and that happens.
Yes.
We're gonna roll into the last case study. This is an international roll-up of specialized manufacturers and distributors in the HVAC industry.
Yeah.
So what were their main requirements going into the ERP selection?
I think something a little atypical with these guys was that their ownership group was out of Europe. And it basically was, well, why don't you guys just do SAP?
Yeah.
So a big part of what we had to do up front was demonstrate why not to get, for this particular play, into a tier 1 ERP, not just SAP, but others.
Right.
These guys were sub 500 million, and a lot of the portcos were coming off of like tier 3 kinds of software solutions. So to jump up to a larger app would have been way out gradient, and people would have left in droves, just being honest. So that was a major challenge, because the investment group had other sort of portfolio types of companies in this space, this HVAC space, and most of them were running on larger ERPs. So that was sort of the first thing, was to say, hey, there's these tier 2 solutions out there that offer a lot of the capabilities that we need. They might not be as robust and strong, but we don't need that app for a long time. So that was one requirement. I think the other differentiator on this one was, from a sophistication perspective, the GMs of the individual businesses, from an ERP perspective, they didn't know squat. I'm just going to be honest with you. So, you have an investor group that's saying, okay, we need you to get onto a more structured system. Oh, well, who's going to disagree with that? Except then you start the process, and you start looking at things like data, where we came off of old systems again, a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of things that were very informal, and now we're trying to formalize in a system. Well, like I said in a meeting yesterday, and you have to pay for your transgressions of the past when you do an ERP implementation, meaning your unstructured data that we used to just slop in for a sales order to get it out the door. When you move into a new system and you see 4 or 5 or 10 different customer entries for the same customer, right? You got to clean that up. And I think, unfortunately, this particular team just hadn't been through that level of a rigorous implementation before. So there were a lot of like OMMMGs, maybe another letter in there, because they just didn't know. And I think the investor group knew, but pretty hands off. I mean, this is multiple portfolios that these guys own, and this was just one of many. And so then you get a group going through and trying to, bring together business processes across very disparate businesses and normalizing data. But they had to do it because there's no way that the North American president in this case could run these businesses without having some standardization in place to know what was really happening. So it was tough. It's a really tough project.
Yeah. And so you just kind of highlighted what they set out to do, but what problems did the new ERP solve at the end of the day?
Did or didn't?
Did.
Yeah.
You could go either way, but did.
Yeah. I think the did side was it got things cleaned up.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And that's awesome. That's much better for all the businesses. That's just a good thing to do. I think the thing that it didn't do though, was we had the standardization, had more reporting and analytics and insight and blah, 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 all that kind of normal stuff. But I do think that the team doing the implementation, I think they thought it was going to be, this is good to mention. So say there's 4 businesses here, and the first business, I think the timeline was maybe say 9 months. And then the business case was built, basically cost model was built where the next implementation would take 3 months and the next one 3 and the next one 3. So, you're looking at like a 1.5 to 2 year cycle. But what it didn't do though was in the first, I think we picked the hardest business to start, or no, I think it was the business with most support actually for the ERP. And I think as we sort of start that process, and you've also then have to talk to the other businesses at the same time to understand their unique business requirements to build into the blueprint. That's a engramic word, blueprint for PE plays, especially for ERP, right? Here's the architecture diagrams and structure that we're going to implement across all 4 businesses. We'll build that in the first phase and then roll that out across the other 3 because it'll be easy. That wasn't the case. When they got to the other businesses, they all had opinions and thoughts and considerations that hadn't been taken into account during the first phase. Yeah. But, I think ultimately, the ultimate thing, again, if anybody's made it this far in my meandering of all these case studies, which I hope it is helpful, but probably the most important thing I can say on this call is whether you're client side or your PE side, but definitely as a leader on either side, you just need to understand what is probably going to happen. And if you understand that, then when it happens, you don't freak out. I'll watch my language. You just don't, because again, in that last scenario, the second and third businesses were very opinionated on what they needed. But you had a higher level group that could look and say, okay, well, your old businesses, you had custom software and it did 100% of what you needed. Now our packaged app can do 80, but that person that you were dependent upon, your cousin, literally, we are not dependent upon them. Now you do have more manual work that you have to do, but the greater good here for the overall sort of, I don't want to say umbrella, but the overall operating entity is you have systems that are that are supportable, that are backed up, that are in the cloud, that aren't going to die tomorrow and the whole business isn't going to stop. So, I think again, the key thing that I would say to all the people listening and those that listen later on their treadmills and on their bikes, I still love that, is just know these things going into your ERP process. Just know that you're going to run into certain people that say, I can't use this because it's not custom or it's not what I used to do. I think you all know that, but the thing I'm adding to you is to say, have the willingness and the strength to just sort of step up and just say, you don't want to say, I don't care, but you need to say, I understand. And if it was your business, would you pay for this? Because to do what you're asking for, I don't see the need and you see it.
Yeah.
Why don't you chip in a little bit of your salary if this is going to help you with your job? Whatever the reaction is, but you watch that reaction and that tells you if you should do it or not. But I just think if you know what we've talked about on this call and you go into an ERP project, you won't be surprised, right? And at the end of the day, you can have a successful go live and you will be successful if you listen to these things. But what it ultimately comes down to is, of all of our ERP implementations, the PE play with their portfolio companies, whether it's a platform or it's just an individual business, you've just 10x the complexities around the people. So if you can handle those complexities, you will have a successful go live.
Yeah. And I think so many people, if you're not involved in this day to day like we are, and we see all of these things, you don't think about it like that. And you say all the time, minimum viable product. That's what you want to get to. And I think so many companies think the day I turn my system on, it's going to do everything. You can get there, but it's not all at once. There's phases. And again, throughout this entire call, it's about managing expectations. And that can be so hard, especially when you're like, I'm getting this shiny new thing and I'm so excited about it. Like, I'm going to go buy a new car. Maybe it'll fly because that's where we're at now. And it's not going to fly. Like it's not going to fly.
And you might even, honestly, people, like if you're going into an ERP project in this case, I know this calls a little yip yap from my side. I'd have them listen to it.
Yeah.
I really would. And then say, let's, go listen to this. You can speed up. I can talk like really super fast and it can go fast. Make them go listen to it and then have them come back to you and have a dialogue about, okay, so what are you going to do? I get it that you had a custom system for 20 years and it was perfect and it ran your business and blah, blah, blah. But you got to understand the risk I have as the new owner here that I'm depending upon your cousin. And I'm not going to have that risk in my business. Like, come on. I never thought about that. See, we have all these flip-flopping of the jaws things that people listening to this probably understand, or they wouldn't have come to this call. It's the people that don't understand what we're talking about that are going to lead to issues in the past. And I apologize if anybody's now listening to this and I've offended you. But I'm being very caring here that if you can really spot why you have to go through the ERP for the Portco, and you stick to that throughout the process, you're like 10 times ahead and will increase your likelihood of success by 100%.
Right. So just to kind of wrap up this call, what special relationships will software vendors make with these private equity clients?
Oh, yummy. Special relationships. A lot of the software vendors have people that focus on sort of PE liaison or private equity, institutional banker sort of relationships, right? And they'll develop standard terms and conditions that go with the deals. And usually a big part of that is a discount. Now, the reality is it's not like the PE makes a deal that says, okay, all of our portcos are going to go with you or something like that. I mean, maybe some. We certainly don't get involved in those because they don't need us. But most of the deals that we've been a part of have been, hey, let's negotiate a specific percentage of discount and some other key terms, rate caps or limited liability increases or, removing language that if they buy another business that the contract has to be renegotiated, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, that's good value for sure. There's no doubt. I mean, frankly, when we're negotiating a deal, we always get better discounts than the PE does because we know the buttons this is what we do for a living. We don't buy companies, right? Like and sell companies. That's what PEs do. We buy and help clients buy software. So we know exactly where the market conditions are at any given time. So if they get a 25% discount, well, our last year we just got 40 guys. So why don't we go with ours? Okay.
Yeah.
But there are definitely, and there's also liaisons that will be assigned to you as a private equity that can help you when your portcos have problems too. So definitely worth looking into those relationships. You're not locked into only buying software from them, I think. Like I said, I've never run into one that was, but I would read it closely.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, honestly, a one-on-one negotiation usually seems to do a little bit better from a discounting in my own experience. But again, that's what we do for a living. You know, if we were doing 20 ERP rollouts for our PE, yeah, I would probably want a standard contract. And I regret that I'm about to say this, but I'm going to say it. Just don't take the discounts that they offer you. It's a negotiation, and know that whatever you're going to end up with, you probably could get a little bit better, especially if it's at the year end or the quarter end, or their earnings are going down because not so many people are buying new licenses, and like what's happening right now, so just be aware of those factors when you come into those relationships. I'll leave it with that.
Definitely. Is there anything else that you would like to add for anybody who might be on the call? Or you feeling good about everything?
Done.
Perfect.
That's it.
I feel good about it, but I always like to give you an opportunity in case something else popped into your mind. But
Yeah.
well, thank you, everyone. Thank you again for joining us for today's call. Thank you, Shawn, for speaking as always. Please let us know if we can answer any questions you might have, and you may have a lot after all of the content that we just covered. So be sure to join us for our next webinar, which is scheduled for Thursday, May 2nd, ERP Implementation Case Study Series, Manufacturers, where Shawn will review real case studies for unique manufacturers and how they successfully manage their business requirements and expanded into adjacent services, as we talked about earlier. So please go to our website, erpadvisorsgroup.com, for more details and to register. ERP Advisors Group is one of the country's top independent enterprise software advisory firms. ERP Advisors Group advises mid to large size businesses on selecting and implementing business applications from enterprise resource planning, customer relationship management, human capital management, business intelligence, and other enterprise applications, which equate to millions of dollars in software deals each year across many industries. This has been the ERP Advisor. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.